All right. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I want to thank you for joining us for another Recovery Month session as we keep going with different things within DECA to promote recovery and different things we can do to have good mind, body, and spirit. So first, I want to say thanks for everyone joining from different locations around DECA and wherever you may be. So thank you again. Want to introduce Jill. Jill's going to be talking about Brene Brown's Daring Way approach, how it supports recovery. So I'll let Jill go ahead and take away today's presentation.
Hey, thanks, Alex. Hi, everybody. Happy Recovery Month. Happy last official day of summer. My name is Jill Rohde. I'm a therapist at First Step at Lakeview in Lawrence, Kansas. And I'm also, would you do slide 2, Alex? There it is. I am a certified Daring Way facilitator. And what I discovered about half an hour ago, is I was looking at my wall, at my little certificate, and I don't know if you can read that, but what this certificate says is that 6 years ago today, I shook hands with Brene Brown and was ready to truly officially begin my journey as someone that shares her work with the world. So I'm really happy to be able to share this work with you, and I'm thrilled that I can share it with our clients every week. So who is Brene Brown and why should you care? I guess, yeah, I'm gonna do little hand signals for slides. There you go. So what is before you is Brene Brown's official professional bio. But what I want you to know is that she is a grounded theory researcher in the field of social work. Also, you should also know that she is someone that identifies as having 26 years of living in recovery. So she is someone who has a really deep personal connection to the work that we all get to do with our folks here at DECA. So anyway, so she's a grounded theory researcher, and what that means is that she collects research by interviewing thousands of people, and she started her research with the question, she wanted to understand what is the anatomy of human connection, how does it work? And so by interviewing thousands of people, she and her team analyzed the patterns, what enables people to truly connect with one another. And what kept emerging is, what were the barriers of connecting? And what those barriers were shame and the idea of scarcity. Those were two feelings and concepts that got in the way of humans connecting with one another. So when she, finally had a clear picture and a clear definition in her mind of what shame was, she wasn't satisfied with that. She's a social worker. She's driven to find solutions. And so she wanted to go back and analyze those patterns and kind of discover what are the people doing that are able to move through shame and deeply connect with other people. What are they doing? So she asked these two questions. She asked, what exists in the absence of shame? In other words, what exists when shame is not absolutely running that person's show? And the second question is, how are people moving through feeling shame? And so the answers, kind of in a nutshell, are the thing that exists in the absence of shame is a sense of worthiness that comes from living wholeheartedly. And how people move through shame is a skill set. It's a practice of something that she calls shame resilience. So slide number 4, please. Okay, so here's some definitions so that you have a better understanding of what she's talking about. So she defines shame as basically the fear of disconnection. It's that belief that I am not worthy. I don't belong. I am bad. I am not worthy of connecting with other humans. And she calls this the most primitive human emotion. And what that means is that that emotion has a really deep connection to the fight, fight, or freeze response. So what that tells us is that shame is connected to our sense of survival. When we feel it, our body takes over and says, your life is in danger. You got to do something. So when we feel shame, we feel that danger. Shame resilience, there it is 4 strategies, I guess, that help us understand our vulnerabilities. They help us cultivate empathy, courage, and compassion, and they help us live wholeheartedly. And so she's broken them down in Brené Brown way into these 4 bullet points. This is what you need to do to practice shame resilience. Recognize shame, understand its triggers. 2, practice critical awareness, which means reality check that message. 3, reach out to someone you trust. 4, speak shame and talk about what you feel and ask for what you need. So let me just kind of side note for a second. So when I was asked to give this presentation, immediately I went into shame, right? Like, oh my God, here I'm being asked to do something that's kind of different. And I imagined that there would be hundreds of you sitting there watching me. And as I look down here, like I know we've got about 15 or 16 out there in the dining room. So shout out to my people down the hallway in the dining room. But I'm seeing that there's like 9 participants here. So when I was imagining hundreds, that number is in actuality smaller. But then today, as I was thinking about doing this, I kind of thought about how absurd it is that I'm giving a presentation basically to myself. I don't have an audience. I'm looking at me right now. We're reading these words. So I'm being sort of bombarded by my own internal messages of shame. And so that is the resilience I am practicing right now in delivering this information to you. So there you go. Let's look at slide number 5. Okay, so why am I sharing the daring way with our folks? This quote is kind of the gist of it. So the Daring Way curriculum is designed to teach several strategies that help people reconnect to who they are and clarify what gives us purpose and meaning, what gives our lives purpose and meaning. We learn how to identify what we need from our people and how to better show up for them in return. So one of the most common things that I hear when I first sit down with a client in my office is, I don't know who I am anymore. And I don't know if other clinicians can relate to that, but a lot of people, when they are coming out of active addiction, just have completely disconnected from who they are and what they want. So I hear, I don't know who I am anymore. I hear things like, I feel numb. I'm angry all the time. I'm tired. People walk all over me. Nobody trusts me. And I don't trust anyone. So when people share these thoughts and feelings with me, they are bravely allowing themselves to be vulnerable with me. I don't take that privilege lightly. And I just want everyone to know that I feel so excited when people share that with me. I feel so excited that I have the ability to say with confidence, I know how to help you with that. I have a program here that is going to help you reconnect with you and reconnect with your people. So I think this curriculum fits really well with treatment because it helps folks develop kind of a platform that that all future healing work can spring from. It invites people to slow down, dig deep, and invest in meaningful relationships with themselves and with the people around them. So we spend some time exploring who we are, what our values are. And my favorite word that I will repeat over and over and over is we need to come up with specifics. What specifically creates trust and support in our lives? So that's why I really love teaching it, is because it's the kind of work that doesn't just apply to women or to people with a substance use disorder or people with a mental health diagnosis. This content applies to everybody. And so that means that it's always alive. And you can return to it again and again. So I'm going to share the introductory video to the Daring Way curriculum. It's 9.5 minutes long. All of the clients at First Step have seen it more than once. But it is something that will kind of set the tone so that you all can understand what the Daring Way is about. So I'm going to have my screen shared here. Okay. And I'm going to push play somehow. There we go.
Hi, everybody. My name is Brene Brown, and I'm a research professor at the University of Houston Graduate College of Social Work. Welcome to the Daring Way. This is a very exciting and very personal endeavor for me. The Daring Way represents the culmination of all of the research I've done over the past dozen years plus, starting with the work on shame and going into the work on vulnerability and courage and worthiness. The Daring Way got its name from the title of the book, Daring Greatly, that I wrote, and it came out in September of 2012. And I want to tell you the story behind the title of the book because I think it'll explain the context for the Daring Way for you. I think, like everyone, I spent my life trying to overcome some of those messages that made me feel like I'm not enough. And I think all of us have in our mind things that we would never want to hear about ourselves, things that we spend our whole life trying to perfect and perform and please to get away from. And for me, one of the ways that showed up is that I really tried to engineer my career to be just small, kind of right under the radar, big enough to get the word out, but not so big that I called too much attention and would find myself in the crosshairs of critics. And so when I recorded the 2010 TEDx Houston talk on vulnerability, I had no idea what I was getting into. I really thought it was just a live event for 500 people. I didn't pay much attention to the fact that it was recorded, and I certainly would have never guessed that, 3 years later now, it's on the main TED.com website, and close to 11 million people have watched it. So I was involuntarily flung into vulnerability in a way that was both exciting and terrifying. And so one day in particular, there was a lot of media coverage about the TED Talk when it started to go viral. And there were articles on every news website. There were interviews on the radio. And I had this very serious mandate from my husband and my therapist, which was do not go online and read the comments. So I went online and I read all the comments. And remember those things I just mentioned, the things in the back of our head that keep us from showing up and being seen because we're terrified? All of those comments that I feared hearing were right there online. Things that were very painful. Of course, Brene Brown embraces imperfection. What choice would you have if you look like her? You should wait to talk about worthiness when you lose 15 pounds. I feel sorry for your children. Wouldn't it be horrible to be married to her? Just things that were super painful. So as a trained mental health professional, I did the best thing I could think of, which was to grab a jar of peanut butter, a blanket, and watch 10 hours of Downton Abbey on television. And I just sunk. I kept thinking to myself, I should have never put myself out there. I should have never put myself out there. It wasn't worth it. It was not worth it. This is too painful. And so, when you use television or movies to numb and they're over and you're like, oh God, this can't be over. I don't want to go back to my real life. When they were over, I got my laptop out and I started to do searches about like who are the actors and when was this filmed and where was that castle. And one of the things I wanted to know is who was the president in the United States during Downton Abbey, this period drama, on public television. And so I just did a search for president, and I thought maybe it was Theodore Roosevelt. So I put president 1910, and the universe conspired to change my life that moment, because the first thing that came up in the search results was a speech that Theodore Roosevelt gave. And so I just started reading it, and I came across a passage that changed my life. And I want to read it to you. It says, "It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who at the best, in the end, knows the triumph of high achievement, and who, at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly." So when I read that, much like I'm trying not to do right now, I just burst into tears. And I thought, this is who I want to be. I want to be in the arena. I want to be a courageous person. I want to spend my life daring greatly. And the bottom line is, if you're going to show up and be seen, you're going to get your butt kicked. We live in a world where everyone's a critic, everyone's cynical, everyone has 1,000 different ways that you should be doing things better, but very few people actually show up and be seen and put themselves out there. So my first learning from that experience was, this is who I want to be. I want to be a courageous person. And I also want to be comfortable and under the radar, but I don't think the two coexist. I think we can choose comfort or we can choose courage, but we can't have both, because rarely is doing the courageous thing the comfortable thing. The second thing I learned was, this is everything I've ever learned about vulnerability in my research. Vulnerability is not about winning. It's not about losing. It's not about kicking butt. It's about showing up and being seen when there are no guarantees. And the third thing that I learned, which I think my husband thinks has made me kind of dangerous, but it has really changed my life. And I learned it not only from this quote, but from doing all these interviews with these incredibly brave people over the years. And that is simply this: if you're not in the arena, also getting your butt kicked on occasion, I'm not interested in your feedback. I need to surround myself with people who care about me, not because I succeed all the time and not because I can kick ass all the time, but because I'm willing to try and I'm trying to contribute in this life more than I criticize. So that is what the Daring Way is about. The Daring Way is a program that's built on 13 years of research that tries to provide a method for you to figure out how you can show up, be seen, and live brave in your life. And so the first question I think we ask is, where do you want to show up and be seen and live brave? Is it in your marriage? Is it with your partner? Is it at work as a leader? Is it as a parent? Is it in your recovery? Is it with your faith? Where do you want to show up, be seen, and live brave? The next question, which is so hard for someone like me, is what permission do you need to give yourself to do this work? I do scary things all the time, like taping this right now. There was a time, and people watching this who've known me for a long time, there was a time when I actually said out loud, If you ever think we're going to have a curriculum where there's a tape where I'm talking, it'll be a cold day in hell. So here I am trying to be brave, but what permission did I need to get, what permission do I need to give myself to do this? And I write permission slips every time I do something on TV or if I go to see my child perform. Permission to be uncool, permission to be terrified, permission to screw up. What permission do you need to give yourself to do this work? One of the things that I've learned from this work that has changed my life the most, maybe, is the fact that I was raised to believe you were either brave or you were afraid. You were courageous or you were fearful. And the truth is that I am brave and afraid all the time in the exact same second. So one thing I always give myself permission to do is to be afraid and to also be brave, and to be uncool and goofy, which is hard for me, but a real part of my daring. And the last question is, what do you need from the folks around you? What kind of support do you need? Sometimes the most courageous way we can show up is to look across from us and ask the people across from us what we need in terms of support. We're often also good at giving support and giving help, but not so great at asking for what we need. And the bottom line is, you can't do this work unless you're willing to start this adventure in bravery by asking for what you need from the people around you. Thank you for daring greatly with me.
All right. So thank you for daring greatly with me too. I relate to that woman. So I wanted to give all of you a little something that I learned from my training that you can use to tap into the spirit of the Daring Way curriculum. So all of my groups, I start by having them answer these 5 questions on the board in front of everyone. These questions are a great tool to get people in the group room and get their minds, in the room, as we say. But you can use these questions for anything that you are about to do where you feel vulnerable. So a tough conversation, giving a presentation to what feels like yourself, anything that you are about to do that where you feel vulnerable. And Brene defines vulnerability as anything that involves risk, uncertainty, and emotional exposure. So there are a lot of things that would fall under that category. These questions, the slide there says they promote authenticity, mindfulness, and empowerment. But they can also be used to help us stay connected to ourselves when things feel risky. They can help guide us through uncertainty. And they can help us get support when we are feeling emotionally exposed. So let's go through those questions together. There we go. So the first question, and if you're a note taker, you might want to write these 5 questions down. So the first question, what brings you here today? How do you connect the way you spend your time to your most important values? And up there on the slide, it says, do you even know your most important values? And for those folks that, get to go through this curriculum with me, we spend some time figuring out what those are and what they look like. So what brings you here today? What is your intention? Why did you even choose to show up? How are you connecting meaning to, this moment in your time? A lot of people will answer this question in group. My feet, there's always one of those. Recovery, being able to see my kids, my PO. And when I see responses like my PO, for example, I ask, what does it mean to see your PO? Why is doing what your probation officer says, why is that important to you? Because your freedom's important, or, other aspects of your life. So that's an opportunity to connect to your values. Let's do the next one. The second question, what fears or concerns do you have about this group or this conversation? This is an opportunity for you to get in there and connect with your thoughts and your emotions. What am I nervous about? What am I afraid is going to happen? This helps you identify and face your fears. In a group setting, this helps you practice a little bit of vulnerability. I'm nervous that people are going to think I'm dumb, or that I'm going to lose focus, or that I'm going to fall asleep, or that I'm not going to understand what they're talking about. So this question really helps connect you with some of those shame messages that keep us from showing up. So the next one. Oh, here's a little quote from Brene Brown herself. Vulnerability is the birthplace of love, belonging, joy, courage, empathy, accountability, and authenticity. So all of the stuff that we want more of in our lives comes from giving ourselves permission to practice vulnerability. All right, next slide. Question number 3, what would a successful experience look like for you? In other words, how will you know that this was a good use of your time? This is a really empowering question. Like your time is valuable. How do you spend it? What are your expectations? What do you want to happen? What do you want the outcome to be? This allows you to kind of set your tone and value yourself. All right, number 4. Oh, here's another quote. In order for connection to happen, we have to allow ourselves to be seen, really, truly, deeply seen. Yes, we have to, shed some of our armor and put down some of our shields and practice vulnerability and practice thinking of ourselves. That helps us connect with other people. If other people are doing that too, authenticity, it's the quality of our relationships really deepens. So next slide. So number 4, what supports do you need from the group today? This is a tough question. People don't know what to ask for. They don't know what they can ask for. So tune in. What is truly helpful to you? Look around the room or look at who you're about to have this conversation with. What can that person or what can those people realistically offer you in terms of support? Be specific. Be as specific as you can, because that'll help you get what you need, and it'll allow the person or the people around you to step up, but it'll also allow them the ability to say, you know what, I can't do that, but I can do something else. And that's another way to have an authentic connection with someone. So what supports do you need from the group today? All right, next one. What boundaries need to be in place in order for you to feel safe? This is also a very tough question, as it says right there. A lot of people can really easily tell you when they feel unsafe. So that might be a good place to start. So when when do I feel unsafe? And then is it the opposite of that that helps me feel safe? Do I know where my exits are? Am I comfortably dressed? Are people yelling? I don't want yelling. What is okay with me and what is not okay? And then I have to have the ability to ask for that. I think next slide. Yeah, so there are those 5 questions. This is the tool that I want to offer you to take and use in your personal life and in your professional life. You really have to connect with who you are, what you want, and you have to be able to ask for it, which involves several skill sets and several opportunities to practice. Next slide. So yeah, your challenge is to identify where you want to show up, be seen, and live brave, and practice some shame resilience, identify shame, practice the 5 questions to help you show up and be authentically you. And the rewards are endless. Next slide. All right, so look at that. So here we are at the end. It's 3:31. Where can you find more Brene Brown? She is incredibly prolific. She has a website that has so much information on it, so many downloadable tools, so many classes, so many links to interviews, and she's out there. She has a podcast that she started right at the beginning of the pandemic. So all of those interviews that she's conducting are extremely relevant to this bizarre time that we are all living in. And so I've been listening to those through Spotify. So you could probably access those wherever you get your favorite podcasts. She's also the author of 6 books. If I were to recommend that you read one book out of all of hers, I would recommend her most recent, which is Dare to Lead. She wrote that with the idea that someone gets on the plane in Los Angeles and they can read it until they get off the plane in New York, if it's a direct flight. Dare to Lead has kind of all of the content in her prior books wrapped up into that one, and it's just fantastic. You can find her TED Talk on YouTube or on the TED website. And she also has, in the fall of 2019, she did a special on Netflix called The Call to Courage, which if you've been through my group and you watch that, you will recognize a lot of her stories and a lot of her messages. So thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to practice some vulnerability and show up and be seen and live brave. I appreciate you. I see there's a question, but I can't read it. Can I read it?
It just says, thank you so much, Jill. So Ashley says, thank you so much.
Hey, thanks. Have a great day, everybody.
Yep, take care. Thanks for joining, everyone.